Pride Month is celebrated in June. Today, we are going to discuss the history behind Pride, break down the misconceptions, and have a better understanding of the LGBTQ plus community. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mansi Baxi, Daya's client advocate, to the show. Good morning, Mansi. It's been a while. I have not seen you. I know you've been here.
Yeah, I was here in October. It was Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Okay.
So it's good to be back. Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you for coming. How are you doing? Let's begin with that.
I'm good. It's been a busy year so far, just running, one thing after another, but everything is good. Daya's good. And,
That's great.
Continuing to do our work and
yes, changing lives and helping a lot of people out there. Yeah. So, Mansi, let's begin with the history behind Pride.
So Pride started actually in 1970, in June of 1970, after the Stonewall riots, which I don't know if either of you have heard about.
Yeah.
But in 1969, there's a place in New York City called the Stonewall Inn, and actually there was a police raid. And the Stonewall Inn is a place where a lot of the LGBTQ community would go. It was a safe place. It was just a communal, safe place for them, and they could be themselves and, have the relationships and friendships that they wanted to have, because at the time, it was illegal. Sodomy was, it was a problem, of course, and it was illegal to be a gay person, and you couldn't be in same-sex relationships, and so there was this police raid, and it continued on, I think, for about a week. And so in June of 1970, basically the LGBTQ community plus, allies, they started celebrating gay rights. Okay. And it really started to support those in the community. And then, with time, of course, looking at the history of Pride in general, it continued on. But there's a lot of stigma that folks in this community have had to experience. There's a lot of stigma and denial and shame associated with being in this community. The American Psychiatric Association only removed homosexuality as a mental illness in 1973. And it's been a long path for those in the community to get equal rights. Same-sex marriage, the first same-sex marriage was only legalized or allowed in this country in 2004, which is pretty recent. That's only 20 years ago. But, continuing even after the 70s, it also coincided with the civil rights movement. And it's just been this consistent move forward, trying to push through. And even in the 80s, there was the HIV/AIDS epidemic, which was really sad because it started in San Francisco amongst gay men. And, men who have sex with men are more susceptible to contracting HIV/AIDS. And the government kind of ignored the situation. President Reagan didn't really do anything. They didn't want to fund pharmaceutical companies. There was still this concept of electric shock therapy that you can cure people. And so the people in this community have really struggled and endured a lot of pain. Yeah. So Pride Month is really to just celebrate them, highlight them, build awareness, educate people, and then have fun too. Pride Festival.
Yes.
I have a lot of friends who are part of the community. So since I was in high school, I've been going to Pride events and festivals, Pride parades. And there's just so much love. So it's there's so much stigma associated even in our community. But when you go to these events, you feel so much love, and there's these misconceptions, right?
Correct.
But actually, it's really just about love and wanting to be who you are as a person. So that's a little bit about the history.
Okay, and so who can participate in celebrating Pride Month?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Whether you are a part of the queer community or you are an ally, anybody, everybody can. Even just, you don't have to go to an event. Even just reading about gay rights history. I was actually on CNN's website, and they have, it's like a gay rights timeline. And it was really interesting to look, because it starts out in the 1800s, and just to see this country's progress and all of the really important events that have happened.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to just read the individual things from 1800s to now. So yeah, everybody can celebrate Pride. I'm sure if you go to Target or any stores, there's a lot of marketing
Yes.
and branding around Pride.
Yes.
But I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of events going on around the city. I know that the Pride Parade this year, the City of Houston one, is the last weekend of June, and then there's actually another one the previous weekend,
Okay.
which I think is formed more by the community themselves.
Okay.
The City of Houston one has a lot of vendors and, you know, the fire department, a lot of local organizations will come together for that last one, but the same for the previous one. And of
Yeah.
course, if you're in downtown, which is where I live, you can see all the clubs. Everybody is kind of already started.
Yeah, it's a colorful event,
Yeah,
right?
it has. All the
It's a
drag
lot of fun.
shows, all of that stuff has already started. So
Oh, wow.
it's fun. Yeah.
Wow. So why is it important to encourage and support everyone to take part in Pride Month, even if they are not part of the LGBTQ plus community?
Again, it's just about creating a safe space for those individuals. We never know the people around us, what their identity is.
Yeah.
In our community, everything is really hush-hush, right? So we don't ever want to talk about things. But when we hear, you know, the verbiage of what the conversations that people have around us, whether it's an uncle or an auntie or whoever it is, it starts to make you internalize. If you are somebody who wants to explore your sexuality or your gender identity, also our children, we want to support our children to allow them to be whoever they are. Or if our kids, you know, they have friends, and
Yeah.
especially I think for the South Asian kids that are born here,
Yeah.
kind of navigating two, you know, identities in general of being like South Asian, but also a Texan American, and feeling divided already. But then, you know, that intersectionality of your gender and then your sexuality, your socioeconomic status, all of these things play a part in who we become. So wanting to have open conversations, wanting to be inclusive, wanting to provide support, and educating ourselves so, you know, we can keep getting better as a society. And it's,
Yeah.
a lot of people think that what's the point of having a conversation, you know, with a family member? Because sometimes there's a lot of pushback. This is something that I go through all the time with family.
Yeah.
Specifically about domestic violence. I had a conversation with a family member on Friday. We had a family gathering, and they were like, no, but domestic violence doesn't happen in the Gujarati community. And I was like, yeah, it does. You're just not seeing it, but it's
Right.
there. The same thing applies to those in the queer community.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good that you're saying, you know, have these open communication and open dialogues, because sometimes, and especially with kids, you know, they're very curious, and sometimes they have questions, and we cannot answer these questions because we ourselves don't have that knowledge. So gain the knowledge, read about it, get the proper resources, right?
Yeah.
Then you can have that conversation. But instead of shrugging it aside and saying, let's not talk about it, because then curious minds leads to more things, right?
Well,
So it's
curious mind,
always
that, yes, but also misconceptions.
correct.
So, you know, as a parent or an adult, or even like I don't have kids, but I'm an aunt to all my nephews. I've had conversations with my nephew about just even gender equality.
Yeah.
You know, what it is to be a woman or a man. And in layman's terms, you know, you can try and have these conversations. Obviously, you have to be age appropriate and all of those things. But as a adult, you know, just reading, Googling,
Yeah.
reading books about it, and really understanding the struggles. I think when we stop thinking that we're different from other people, the reality is, as people, we're all the same.
Yeah.
We just have different
Absolutely.
struggles.
Yeah.
So just reading and learning.
Right.
And if you don't know something, that's okay. But then reaching out, trying to learn more, and, you know, asking for help. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I may not know your answer. Like if your kid asks you a question, it's like, oh, I may not know, but let me find out. now.
Yes,
I'll let you know,"
exactly.
instead of ignoring the topic completely.
Yeah, but you know, one thing I've also noticed, like in the like kids movies now, they have two dads, or they'll have like a friend that has a boyfriend. You know, so
Yeah.
I've seen that trend that's happening, and it's getting introduced more. But of course, in the South Asian community, we tend to just change the channel,
Yeah.
or you know, if
Yeah.
it's not seen, then it's not there.
Right.
It's like, don't ask, don't
Don't
tell.
ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
Exactly. And kids are going to be curious, because the day and age that we live in now, there are like kids when they're going to school, some of the kids have two dads or two moms.
Oh, yeah.
And our kids know about this. They hear about this. So when they'll come home, they'll ask you, hey, why does this person have two dads and not a mom or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to like answer those questions, not just say, well, don't worry about it. Like, we don't talk about this, and just, end the
Correct.
conversation. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to answer them. But again, like you said, you have to have the right resources to be able to answer them correctly. You don't want to incorrectly answer those questions either, because then your child is going to be more confused than when you came in and asked you those questions. That's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah. No, but even when you look at Bollywood movies, like I watched this, I forgot the name of the movie, but it's with Ayushmann Khurrana. He is in a gay relationship and like trying to push the family to accept. I don't remember the name.
She was, I think, transgender.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
There was that movie. Then there was this other Bollywood movie. Again, I don't remember names or actors.
Yeah.
But there was a guy who was gay. There was family pressure for him to get married, but his family didn't know.
Yes.
And then there was a woman as well, but she was a lesbian. But they decided to get married just so that they could live who they wanted to be, because the partner knew, but they had their own partners separately. I'll look up the name
that's
of the movie.
interesting.
Yeah, I've not heard of that one. But there's one that was with where the guy was gay and he had a boyfriend in America.
Oh.
And he came for like the family event because it was like some big birthday of their dada or something like that.
Oh, Kapoor and Sons.
Yes, that was also.
Yeah, that's another. I forgot about. I love that movie.
That was
so
a good
much.
movie. Yeah.
And it's interesting because Alia Bhatt is in that.
Yes.
And so there's this dynamic between both brothers that they both like her.
Yeah.
But actually he's gay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that movie. That's a great movie.
That was a good
too.
movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that, like within Bollywood itself, they are breaking the barriers too. They are trying to showcase more of, the community as well, because that is important, because people usually, like, they are the big influence, right, in our lives. So it's nice to see that change.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
I've even seen it with some musicians.
Yeah.
So there's this music producer, musician. His name is Ritviz. He's from Pune. And he doesn't do mainstream Bollywood music. He kind of does his own thing, and it's like a mix of electronic dance music, and I don't even know how to describe his type of music. It's very uplifting music.
Yeah.
But a lot of his music videos really highlight the queer community in like Bombay. And one of the videos, I can tell you all about it after I look it up. It's the entire music video is just. It's this story of different people in the queer community and how they feel and how they're kind of ostracized or made to feel negative. But then by the end of the music video, they're all together and it's like a little pride parade. So it's even in music, not just,
Right.
movies. And even here in the U.S., a lot of, now that we're starting to get more representation in TV shows and movies, we're seeing queer characters. We actually... There's the Asian American Foundation.
Okay.
So have you all watched a show called Atypical?
No, not me.
So it's on Netflix. It's a great
Yeah.
show. It's about a kid who's autistic. But his best friend in that, the actor's name is Nick Dodani, and in real life he is gay, and he speaks out about it. And actually, he came to our office a couple weeks ago. He's filming like this little documentary thing, but you're seeing that representation.
Yes.
And they're engaging with community organizations and trying to build awareness. So it's nice to see that change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know we talk a lot about it and we focus more during the month of June, but I truly feel we should continue even once, June has ended, because this is it's part of life, right? So I think it's so important that we continue having those conversations, not just not just the month of June and then it's
not just because
done and
you
over
see
with.
rainbows and pretty colors and marketing.
Yeah.
It really has, because that
It should have a
lot
meaning
of
to
people
it,
in the
yeah.
queer community do feel like sometimes it's marketed.
Right.
So trying to support them throughout the year. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, because they still right now they are struggling a lot of challenges, and so for them, for them to share stories sometimes can be very painful too. But it's nice to sit and talk to them or have this conversation, because we ourselves will learn a lot from them. So yeah. So, Mansi, what is the difference between gender identity and sexual identity?
So I think of the two things as completely separate things.
Okay.
I think with these terms kind of coming up more recently, especially in the South Asian community, it's a little complicated, or it feels difficult, right, to understand what they mean, even with pronouns. I know
Yes.
that's a thing that, people are feeling challenged by. So gender identity is really about who you are, and sexual identity is really about who you like or who you're attracted to. So if you think of the two things as completely separate, compartments, then it's a little bit easier to understand. Gender identity is, whether you're biologically male, female, if you don't want to conform to being viewed as male or female, you could be gender non-conforming, or you can be non-binary, which means that you want to have they, them, their pronouns.
Okay.
It's really just about wanting to be seen as a person, not having that gender or societal pressure, that those gender roles associated to you just because of your appearance. It's about people wanting to be who they are, dress how they want to dress, have the lives that they want to have without those pressures. And so that's gender identity. And then sexuality is, again, who you like, whether that means you're asexual, maybe you're not attracted sexually to anybody, you don't want to be intimate with anyone, to whether you are pansexual or you are in polyamorous relationships, you're gay, lesbian, trans, or just queer. If you're just somebody, it's all of these things are fluid, they can change over time. And a lot of it is just about exploration. And, you may feel that, right now, let's say I'm biologically female, I associate myself that way. But in the future, you may feel like, what, that doesn't feel right for me. Maybe I want to be, non-binary, or even with sexuality. You can be attracted to different people for different reasons, right? Sometimes it's not only like
Physical.
physical. And I believe like being pansexual, that just means that you are attracted to anybody. It doesn't matter what your gender identity is or your sexual orientation. It's really just for like loving or looking at people for who they are and appreciating them for who they are. Because I think sometimes there's confusion, let's say, and I've had conversations with my dad about this. So like we have these we have these conversations pretty often.
That's so great.
Sometimes he gets really confused about, let's say gay relationships, like men with men, but he's like, oh, but this person is transgender male. So how is that a thing? So I think if we try not to put things in boxes, that's helpful. But coming from society that does that, it's hard to kind of unlearn some of those things.
Yeah.
But it can be fluid. It changes over time. I don't know if y'all have seen Grace and Frankie. I love that show.
Yeah.
But in that show, basically, there's two heterosexual couples.
Okay.
And the two gentlemen, once they're like 65, 70 years old, they are in a relationship together. So it's like, it throws off the whole friend dynamic, because now the two women are getting divorced and the two men are together. But so it can happen later on in life as well. That's the point I'm trying to make, is it's fluid. It can change over time.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what confuses a lot of people, right? Majority of people think that, okay, all this time you were attracted to the opposite sex, but now why has it suddenly changed? So I'm glad you're talking about that, and it makes sense. Like it does not have to be, just because you liked the opposite sex, now for the rest of your life you're going to be that way. Things do, like you said, it's fluid and things do change.
And it's really just about having healthy relationships with people in general, right? Looking at, let's say, in the 70s or 60s, arranged marriages are common in our culture even now, all the time. But there was a lot more pressure, let's say, in the 60s, 70s, to have an arranged marriage. Even if you were gay or if you were lesbian, you were still arranged into a heterosexual relationship.
Yeah.
But now, let's say you're in your 60s, your partner maybe has passed away, or you get a divorce, and now you're actually pursuing the relationships with the sexual identity that you actually feel that you are. They're getting that chance to be themselves at a later time because just time has changed, right? Our society has become more open-minded and progressive.
Yeah. Oh, is it time already? Oh my gosh, this goes so fast. All right. All right. I thought you were just being happy. All right, let's go on a short break, and when we return, we will continue our conversation. This is Chai Time, 103.5 Hum FM. Welcome back to Chai Time on 103.5 Hum FM. I am in conversation with Mansi from Daya, and we are celebrating Pride Month today. So we've been having a very interesting conversation, and let's jump right back into it. I want to really talk about the misconceptions within our, South Asian community.
So a lot of the misconceptions is, and we just, she just mentioned it while we were on break, even people thinking that, but this doesn't happen in our community, right?
Yeah.
That it doesn't exist. There's this othering aspect of it, like no, that's, let's say, for the Western people, or there's this concept that it only exists in Western cultures, or it started in Western cultures, though being queer. Another thing is that there's this concept of like curing somebody through an arranged marriage. So I actually had a client, and we can talk about that, that situation a little bit more later, but basically what he experienced was no matter what was going on, the family was still constantly trying to arrange a marriage for him with a girl. And it's really sad because those people feel judged. They get ostracized, or if they don't give in to what their family pressures are saying, they'll get cut off. And especially when you're young, you're in college, your family is financially supporting you, and then all of a sudden they just cut you off. Another thing, if you look at our South Asian history, we've, transgender people, or like in India, we have hijras, right? They have been a part of our society historically for hundreds and hundreds of years. My aunt, she's a PhD in medieval ancient Indian history, and we have conversations where she tells me that people say that there was no gay men, there was no lesbians, these people didn't exist, but the reality is it was really ingrained in like Hindu culture at the time, in medieval history. Sexual exploration was also a part of our culture. But because of the change and, being traditional and conservative, those societal changes, we've kind of ignored that history. Even now, within the Hindu community, for a lot of the religious ceremonies, you do go to the hijras and you offer them, and you want the blessings from them first. So it's very interesting how when we other them into a specific group and they're separate from society, we respect them. But the concept that they could be living in our society is very difficult to accept.
Wow. So as an advocate, Mansi, what are some of the cultural factors or barriers that you have faced in supporting South Asian LGBTQ plus survivors who have experienced domestic or family violence?
So talking about that survivor I was mentioning earlier, the saddest thing that person went through, or the abuse actually started because the partner, the husband, ended up using the information that he was gay to out him to the family, because the survivor had not been out to the family, because they knew that their family wouldn't accept, his identity. And there was a lot of pressure, they were trying to put him in an arranged marriage and everything. And so he left and came to the U.S. to go to school, and, met his husband abuser. And the abuse really started when the husband contacted the family back home and told them, your son is gay and married to me. And so he used it as a tactic to perpetuate the domestic violence and the sexual assault. So that itself is really difficult, because when you are exploring or you are, confirming your identity, there's a lot of shame and stigma that you feel internally. It's not just what society will tell you, but you feel it internally as well, right? So then to take something as vulnerable as that, to then out you essentially to your family and everything, it's really painful, and it causes a lot of emotional and psychological trauma as well. And it, for this survivor, it was pretty sad because the family did cut him off. And so, fortunately, he was linked to us, so we were able to provide, a depth of services to him, and now he's doing a lot better. But it's really sad, and it's very painful.
Yeah. So you're directly involved with the survivors when they're going through the abuse and wow.
Because I'm an advocate,
right.
so my primary job is to work with survivors.
Yeah.
And so, I've had many clients. Some clients are even exploring. They're in that exploration phase, because some of the clients that are younger, they're in college, let's say, they are exploring because they are in a safe space. When they are at home until they're 18 years old with their parents, they might not feel empowered enough to come out. But when they go to college, they're in safer places, or they find a safe community, and then they're kind of exploring their sexuality and their gender identity. So, and again, we talked about how it's fluid, right? It can change.
Yeah. So now you did mention about the services, but can you elaborate more on that? Like, what services does Daya offer to the South Asian LGBTQ plus survivors?
So all of our normal services that we would provide to any survivor.
Okay.
But we really make sure that we're non-judgmental. We make sure if there's something we cannot do, let's say, to accommodate a specific need, we will, work with other organizations like the Montrose Center. They specifically help survivors of domestic violence who are in the queer community.
Okay.
So we will sometimes work with other organizations, or work with the Title IX office at a college too, to make sure that that client is getting all the resources and support that they can get. Of course, we provide counseling, legal, immigration assistance, financial assistance, employment, education, counseling, all of those things that we would provide for any survivor. But having that cultural lens, and being open, and kind of leading by example, we want to create those safe spaces within Daya, so that those individuals feel safe. And then I was actually thinking, going back to the survivor and some of the barriers from our end, when we are, trying to provide housing, there's this danger assessment we have to do. And I've observed, and we actually had this conversation at work like last year, there's a danger assessment that you do for people in heterosexual relationships, and then if you do the danger assessment for people in homosexual relationships, it actually really waters down the risk. The way that the survey scores are done, basically, it makes it seem like the abuse is less. And so we've had conversations with like Harris County and the housing authority and stuff that we work with, that like we need to accurately represent, this person's danger, their risk. And we have to change systems sometimes, because that's what it takes to support survivors. And we try and do that the best that we can.
Yeah, that's great. Mansi, can you share a story of hope or resilience from your work with the LGBTQ plus survivors that particularly stands out to you?
So there's a particular client that I feel very close to. And after all of the abuse that they kind of went through, there was a period of time, and this person ended up getting protective orders against their abuser, divorce, and they were in college. And so they eventually were able to refocus on school. I mean, they had counseling and all of those other services too. But after some time had passed, they actually really wanted to start speaking out. They felt really empowered after some time because they always felt like, oh, how could this happen to me? I'm from a rich Indian family from Bombay. You know, I've always had money. I'm from a good family. I'm going to a great university. I have a scholarship. Like, how could this have happened to me? And after some reflection, they decided that they want to speak up, and they spoke at our gala, which y'all were at,
Yes.
if you remember.
Yeah.
So for me, that was like a proud mom moment a little bit, because I'm really glad that they felt like they can speak out. And from what I understand, they talk about it openly now in their community, and he really talks about his experience, and has now, more than a year has passed, has gotten a great job at a great company. Immigrations, they're applying for his visa, like everything. So everything is kind of it's like a success story, and I don't want to turn it into a whole thing, but it really did work out for him.
Yeah.
And so I'm very, his resilience and his strength to move past those things and reforge, trying to build a relationship even with his family after that time period was really bad, rebuilding that relationship too, and having those tough conversations. Over time, he really had to have some really hard conversations with his mom, and I know that was really hard for him to do, but over time, it's again like what we were talking about before, being open. And at the end of the day, even as a parent, right, you want to love your child.
Yes.
You don't want to have to be estranged from them.
Yeah. Yeah, the healing process has to begin. So, yeah. But it's so great to know that, his life has changed, and and at the same time, he is talking about it and encouraging those kind of conversations, and not just kept it to himself, but spreading the word, and, letting people know that good things can happen, even though you go through these barriers or these challenges and your struggles, but at the end, you just somehow, and you get, like an organization like Daya to be part of that and to help, your life changes for the better. So
and like as advocates, we really try and encourage our clients to heal through art, or like writing or music, like some sort of art. And so he actually really connected with, it started with journaling, like through counseling. Journaling and writing really helped him heal, but then that has helped him write like things that he has published and stuff like that. Wow. So, even healing through art, through music, it all helps.
Yeah, definitely. So how can we be allies for the LGBTQ community and support them?
Doing exactly what we're doing right now. Having us here to talk about this, that is being an ally, and that's creating a space and on a public platform.
Right.
That itself is so important. There are a lot of people who would not want to do that, especially in our community, considering controversy and all of those things. Again, just, learning, being open to learning, educating yourself, spreading awareness. When you learn things, and maybe sharing it with somebody else that's close to you, having conversations with people maybe you wouldn't normally have conversations with. And it doesn't have to be like every day, but even that, again, like that one conversation can really change somebody's outlook on the whole subject.
Yeah, I remember, Sasha, even you, I'm sure you remember when we first started Chai Time like 7 years ago, and the two of us were really bent on talking about this topic, right? And we strongly believe that we have to normalize this conversation, and we started looking for maybe someone who will be comfortable enough to come and talk about this topic on air. And we were so blessed to meet Parag and Vaibhav. At that time, I think they lived in New York, and somehow I got connected to them, and they came on the show. And I can still remember his parents joined. Parag's parents also came on the show, and listening to their story, especially the parents, really touched. Yes, yes, it was like, and you know, like his speech during their wedding, Vaibhav and Parag's, was just.
I think it went viral too.
It did. Yeah, it did. And we, you know, of course, we being in media, sometimes, you know, we don't know what, you know, what people might think, or people might just, you know, get offended. But that show really had such a positive spin to it. I think, like, a lot of people, like, at least who came to my restaurant, Arling's, heard the show, and they were like, I'm so glad you talked about it. I'm so glad that, you know, they were so proud also in some ways that the parents came, and the parents shared their story, and it wasn't just it's not like it's real, like it's not like they accepted them right away. There was a lot of hesitancy and things like that, but at the end, you know, accepting them and talking about it, that really made that difference, I guess. And I remember Vaibhav, that time his parents were still in India, and he really struggled because when he came here, he had not even like talked to his parents and things like that. But sharing that story, right? It was just a whole different. We went through the emotions ourselves.
We were bawling.
Amazing, though. I'm so glad that they were here to talk about their story.
Yes, to share.
You know,
And
it's really stories that change us, right? And it's the
Right.
emotional aspect that causes societal change.
correct.
It's when it hits you personally and it makes you feel like you can relate to a feeling. That's really when we start to change our thinking.
Yeah, and especially when the parents start accepting that change, you know, it's like, yes, there were you know, there was a lot of struggles for them too to accept it in society itself, amongst their friends, family, all of that. But then, you know, overcoming that, educating their friends and family, and you know, just they continue to do all of this work, and I believe Vaibhav helps a lot of the kids in India as well. You know, like on the WhatsApp, I think through WhatsApp or whatever, but just trying to help them. And especially during COVID, he did not stop. And he continues to do that. In fact, they have 2 kids now. So that's just amazing. They're so cute. So Vaibhav and Parag, if you're listening to us, a big shout out to you guys. We love you. Chai Time really loves you guys. And we hope one day you'll come back to Houston and chat with us again. So it's a whole new, I mean, the family has, you know, they have kids now. So it's nice to see that. And they're still being very active in the community as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, making that change.
Yeah. No, even, you know, having these conversations, sometimes we think we are more open-minded. But when you continue having these conversations, you realize that you might have some other biases that you didn't know.
Right.
And it kind of challenges that thought process sometimes. You know, we have a lot of religious differences, let's say, in our culture. Sometimes it's just a matter of interacting with people, talking to people, even though we think we're liberal, let's say, or we're open. Sometimes there's small things that get triggered in a conversation. It starts to make you think, wait, why do I feel that way? Or, you know, I'm so open about this XYZ thing, but then why does this other little thing kind of bother me a little bit? So having these continued conversations, it helps us learn and grow.
Yeah. So how can our listeners get involved and get more information about Daya's services and resources?
Most important thing, you can go to our website, dayahouston.org.
Yeah.
And that's for any listener experiencing domestic or sexual abuse, whether you're in the queer community or not, or even if you are an organization that wants to find out more, if you want to volunteer, you can go to our website. You can email us at contact@dayahouston.org. Our phone number is also there. Our helpline number is there. You can also follow us on social media, so Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Daya Houston. If you just search for us, you'll find us. Our website also has a list of services that we provide. And, you know, if you ever have questions or you want to support us, just email us, call us, and somebody will direct you to the right person in the right place.
Yeah. I follow your social media like Daya's, and y'all do incredible work. There's always something happening, like events, and it's, y'all just keep going and going. And the thing is also y'all go with the changes too. So that's incredible because, like, you know, you're not just stuck on one thing. You're on so many different issues you'll hit on or talk about. And that's, you know, that's just amazing.
Yeah, I think our team overall really is passionate about just social change in general and making sure people feel accepted. And so, and we're very lucky to be a part of like networks that are also, you know, they have the same mission and passion. So allowing for those partnerships, and even just, you know, as a working environment, we all have our different interests or things that we're passionate about. So we all kind of pursue our own interests as well and try and help Daya grow, right?
Yeah,
so
that's amazing. So before we wrap up, any message for our listeners out there for Pride Month?
Pride Month,
we talked a lot about it,
yeah,
but
we did. Read, research, you know, watch a TV show if you want. Go to Pride. There are so many events going on. If you ever know somebody who needs information, you know, you can reach out to us. We can try and provide resources if you want to support those in the community. There are actually a lot of organizations in Houston that that provide services as well. Just engage with the community and learn and grow, participate. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Have fun.
Are you planning to go to the parade?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I go every year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So
yeah. It's an all-day thing, right?
It's so hot sometimes, though.
Yeah.
So a couple years I went for the walk.
Okay.
So I like walked in the parade, and it was so hot that I didn't stay for like, because then people go out and like all of that stuff. I went home and slept. But last year I went to the parade. It was in the evening. The energy is just, there's so much love, and it's so nice to see community come together. You see people from all backgrounds, not just South Asian, but, you know, people from all communities, all races coming together. So it's really fun, and it's very fulfilling, and like it gives you all the love. You feel the love.
You feel the love, yeah. Thank you, Mansi.
Yeah,
thank you for joining
having
us here this morning. It was such a wonderful conversation, really an eye-opener for all of us and for our listeners too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, listeners, for joining in to Chai Time this morning. We shall see you same time, same place next week. Signing off, Chai Time, 103.5 Hum FM.